Just that since several of us either have difficulty or simply can't get here in the afternoon always, that we shift this year to my apartment either right after the 7:30 minyan, or preferably for me, like at 2:15 after the Seuda.
Yeah, I'm okay. That's good.
Okay. Is anybody not willing to do that?
What was the second?
Okay. At the end of it, it's over. Someone is not willing to do that.
Only one person.
So what? One person is as important.
I didn't hear.
What?
I didn't hear. I want to hear.
I said I was offering to make this year earlier at my apartment rather than at 6:55 here. But if there's a single objection, then we're sticking to this standard. I mean, it's not fair
to fair what? To the majority?
No, it's not fair to the individual. Look, I don't know how to decide. Zev can't come.
You're teaching Gemara. We're
about to learn that one aide is taken over 100 women. Okay. Look, I don't know. Mel, you decide that, okay? I mean, I thought I was doing it fairly.
You're the market share.
The class is scheduled for here. So therefore I felt...
you know what? Leave it as it is. Okay?
That's what I was planning to do.
That's it.
I mean, I don't know. I understand that we'll have only one or two people here then, but that's when it's scheduled for. What?
I said, the rain's supposed to rain, and you'll be lucky to have any.
Yeah, that's all. You'll have yourself, and I guess you'll force my friend Zev to come.
Zev, I'm just as close as the show.
I'd rather come here.
Okay. For coming, well, it'll be standard time.
Regular time.
Okay, I would like to ask that people come 5 minutes early, because I don't know if we have enough time. But what time is Mincha? 6. Oh, I have an hour. Okay. Mincha is at 7:55. All right, fine. We'll leave it at 6:55 in this room on Sunday and Monday. I have nothing to do with tomorrow. Okay? I do not know if David will be here.
COVID.
David has COVID.
All right, but nobody called me. Nobody asked me to come, and it's very hard for me to walk. What? So you want me to come tomorrow too?
It's up to Zev.
All right, Zev, do I have to come tomorrow too?
You're going to make it in your apartment?
No, I'll come here tomorrow if I have to.
David is not coming.
I understand. So I will come here tomorrow also.
It's difficult for you to walk. Why not? We'll make it in your apartment.
Because Zev can't do it. And I'm trying to say that in my opinion, it's only fair to change it if there's a consensus. If there's someone who doesn't.
What is the 6 yes and 1 no? Is that a called consensus or something?
The Swedes can't join NATO unless Turkey agrees. A consensus means everybody. All right. We are in the Gemara. We're picking up after the Mishnah on Pei Zayin Amid Beis. Okay? Now, remember, I had interpreted the Mishnah in a different way than it's actually written. And now you'll see why. Okay? Midikatani Sefer, since at the end of the Mishnah it says, Nisas Shalob Rishus Muteris Lahachsarlai. If she, a straight translation, if she gets married without permission from the Beis Din, she's allowed to go back to husband number 1. So here, Rishutz from the Beis Din, the way I interpret it, meant a special document issued by Beis Din in the circumstance where there was only one aide who said that the first husband died. So the Gemara is saying, If that's the case, shelo b'rishus bezdin ela be'edim, that when it says without this special permission, it means a normal case where two edim came and testified that we know the husband, we saw the husband die. So that's a standard case. She doesn't, the Bezdin has to agree that declare him dead, but they don't give her the special documentation to remarry. And so that, okay, midaklal, the Reisha, B'rishus Bezdin. So in the first case, the fact that it says that without Rishus means with two Edim, without Rish, with the Rishus of the Bezdin, the Eid Echad has to mean that there was one aid and only one aid. So now the Gemara is going to make a general statement which has a tremendous implications all through Judaism. Alma Eid Echad Ne'eman. There are circumstances where a single witness is believed. For example, that's how you can eat. Because each of you goes home for breakfast, your wife fries an egg, and her implicit testimony is that the egg is kosher and I fried it in a kosher frying pan with kosher oil. So you see, we live with Eid Echad, and what the formal formula for that is Eid Echad Ne'eman B'Yisurin or B'Isur V'Heter. When it comes to Isur V'Heter, one witness is sufficient. The Tanan Nami, we learned this elsewhere. Chuchzechu lios misi'in ad b'pa. The custom in Judaism, literally the chazaka, is that we permit a woman to remarry on the basis of a single witness. And not only that, but Eid Echad, where we allow Eid Echad, they don't even have to follow the rules of kosher Eidim. We learned elsewhere in the Mishnah, a gambler, a thief, various categories of men are excluded. Women, slaves are excluded from testifying. But in situations of Eid Echad, we even allow otherwise disqualified witnesses and we accept their testimony. And it goes even further. We even accept hearsay. Okay? Tanan Nami, we learn in the Mishnah, Chuchzichu lios me si'in ad p8. If when we establish that women may remarry based on only one witness, could be even Isha mipi Isha. Sylvia said that Rivka told me she saw him die. Or Isha mipi Eved. Or Sylvia says his slave was there holding his hand when he died and told me about it. Mipi Shifcha, even from a servant girl. So Alma, so we see from this, Eid Echad Mehemen, we do believe one witness, and in these instances, even a second hand, even what we would call today hearsay. The Tanan Nami, and it's not just in those two Mishnayos, there's still another Mishnah. Eid Echad Aimer Ochalta Chelev. If Reuven says to Shimon, I saw you eat chelev, v'hu omer lo achalti, and Shimon says, no, I didn't. Patur. He's patur from achatas. Because, now, you would think this refutes Eid Echad, but we're going to see not like that. Time of the omer lo achalti. The rationale why he's exempt from the chatas is because he said, I didn't do it. Ha, ishtik meheman. Had he not protested, had he remained silent, we would have accepted the witness saying he ate chaylev and he would be chayev the chatas. Alma ed echad meheman. So we see that one witness is believed. So we will get back to why his protest gave him a bitur. But in the meantime, we want to know what Torah authority is there for Bezdin to give this guy to break the normal rule of two witnesses and allow only one. Midiraisa Minolan. Where do we learn this in the Torah? The Sanya, we have a brisa that tells us, and here is why he would be exempt. There's an unusual diktuk over here. Oh, Haida Alav Chatasai. It's passive. If he becomes aware that he had sinned, then the sin is on him. He has to bring a chatas. Okay? And that would imply that he has to have knowledge in and of himself, not that someone else tells him he did something wrong. Okay? Al pisha enu machishay yehe potter. So if someone else's statement is not sufficient, he has to be aware of it on his own. I might have thought that even the testimony should not cause him to be chayiv. Talmud Loimar, so the pasuk says, "Oh hada alav," he became aware of it. Mikol makam, in any possible manner. As soon as I tell Bob he's scribbling in his Gemara, Bob is aware he's scribbling in his Gemara. Okay, so hachidami. So what kind of cases are we talking about here where we're accepting a single aid? Elema da'asu trei v'loko machish lahu. If you say that not one, but two witnesses come and say you're eating chalev, okay, and he does not challenge them, he doesn't argue that I'm not, Karalamali. What do I need a pasuk for that? That's a standard story. Two witnesses and a wrongdoer. Elalav. So we have to be talking in that case about chad, only one witness. V'chilo komachish le meheman, and if the defendant doesn't dispute the testimony of the one witness, he is believed. Shma mina ed echad ne'eman. We do believe one witness, and it's a Torah rule. That's important here. Umimai de mishum de meheman. On what basis do we say that if he does not dispute, he does have to bring the chatas? Okay? Dilma mishum de koshosik. Maybe v'shtika koda adamya. Maybe the fact that he remains silent, and silence is effectively agreement. So what the Gemara here is saying that in effect, by Schwartz telling Abramowitz you did something wrong, and by Abramowitz remaining silent, it's as if Abramowitz is an aid against himself, so to speak, because you have both Schwartz who says you did it wrong, and Abramowitz who silently acknowledges he did it wrong. So that's why he's believed. So if that's the case, then going back to the Eid Echad testifying that somebody died in Pittsburgh and she wants to remarry, it is not supported at this point because her silence seems to be an indicator that he's not dead, not that he is dead. So Teda. So let's understand that the correct way of learning this is not that at this point We're not saying that the one witness is believed and accepted by the court. We're saying the one witness plus his acquiescence is what's being accepted by the court and making him give the chatas. The Ketanvi Seifa, because later on in that Mishnah in Krisos, it goes on to say, Amru Shnayim Ochalta Chalev. If two witnesses come and say you ate Chalev, V'hu Omer Lo Ochalti, and he says I didn't, Potter. In that case too. Also too. In that case, he does not have to bring the chatas. He's Potter because he doesn't really, by saying I didn't do it, he doesn't have the internal sense of he did do it, which is what has to happen to bring the carbon.
If he's just silent,
That his silence is as if he's agreeing.
but it means he really doesn't know.
His silence indicates that the statements of the witness, in courts, in American courts, if you ever watch Law and Order, they hand you a piece of paper where you said something, and does this refresh your memory? Reading it would not be, yes, I wrote, but if the reading it refreshes your memory, you can honestly say, I said or did that. Here too, silence is equivalent of those witnesses refreshed my memory, now I'm aware. Speaking up and saying they're not right is saying, if you're under oath, I honestly don't think I did it. I have no awareness. Okay? So silence is equivalent to the American sense of they refreshed his, does this refresh your recollection or whatever the lawyer says?
So you have to say something, other words.
If you don't think you did it and you want to save yourself the money of the chatas, okay, and you're under oath, okay, that's the Tanakama. But Zev, the Reb Meir says the question doesn't exist. Reb Meir Machayev. Reb Meir says you could, if once there are two witnesses, that establishes the fact that you're sitting in the courtroom, you now are aware of it, and your protests are ignored. Reb Meir says you're chayev. And Reb Meir says, Omer Reb Meir kal v'chomer. I can prove it from a kal v'chomer. If Schwartz kills Abramowitz and two witnesses come to court and say, we watched Schwartz kill Abramowitz after we gave him Hesra, so the court will convict him and put him to death, and Schwartz can protest from now till Tisha B'Av, or at least till tonight when they kill him. I didn't do it, but the two witnesses, he gets convicted.
Is Rabbi Meir counting him as one of the witnesses?
No, Rabbi Meir is saying, if Cohen and Levi come and say, Zev killed Mel, Zev can protest from now till Tisha B'Av, I didn't do it, they will still give you the death penalty. So Reb Meir says that I'll do it back inside. Reb Meir says, if we ignore the guy's protestations in a death penalty case, which is the most chomer case could be, why do we accept his protestations in a place where he just has to kill a shepsel? Okay, we'll do it inside. Reb Meir kal v'chomer. Im heviyuhu shnayim lidei misa chamura. If we accept two witnesses to put someone to death, which is the most chamur case there is, lo yeviyuhu lidei korban hakal. Why should we not accept the two witnesses despite his protestations in the case of a korban, which is significantly less serious penalty than it
actually have two witnesses, two outside witnesses.
That's correct. That's what we're now saying. That with two, according to Reb Meir, with 2 outside witnesses, all the process in the world mean nothing. According to the Chachamim, even in the face of 2 witnesses, they establish the fact that he ate chaylev, but they can't establish the fact that he knows he ate chaylev. I can tell you what you did. I cannot tell you what your motive was. I don't know what's in your mind or in your heart. Okay, and that the Chachamim say that you might be right with the Kal V'chomer, but you're wrong in terms of the law. Why? Amr Lo, the Rabbanan can say to him, Ma'im yirtze loimer mezid oisi. The guy could say, if you want to get out of doing the chatas, the only time you bring a chatas is if it's b'shoigeg. If it's b'mezid, then you get misa b'dei shemayim or karis, whatever the penalty of the crime is. So here, this guy could have said, not, I didn't eat chaylev. Yes, I did. And I did it on purpose. La, 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 la. In which case it'd be putter from the chatas. So by his speaking up, the rabbis say we believe him because he could have gotten out of it with another statement. And he didn't choose to do that. So we believe him that he doesn't really think he did it. All right? So that's the end of that. Now, coming back to the Reisha, which was where the woman went to Bezdin. She had her one witness. Bezdin gave her documentation. She married another man. She's lived happily with the other man. She's got 4 kids. Why does Bezdin come down on her like a ton of bricks? She doesn't has to pay back the first ksuba. This guy has to dump her. He has to leave her penniless. Her kids are mamzerim. Why do we do all that? She acted with permission of Bezdin. It makes no sense. So the Gemara explains, my time, why do the rabbis penalize her so severely? If you say that the first witness was accepted and that's a special case, normally you would have had 2 witnesses. The afal gafta ko machish lahu, even if the individual who's on trial disputes the witnesses, in whom we still believe the witnesses. That's the death penalty case. V'kap ture rabbanan. Here we let the guy off the hook for eating chaylev because he protested, even to witnesses. Elalav mishum de ishtik. So the only reason he would have to bring a chatas is if he's totally silent. The ishtika kahoda adamya, and we assume again that unless you protest, you are accepting the witness's statement as factual. Okay, so Ella svaralhi. So this whole thing, because that means, now we have to understand that idea is not written in the Torah. What's written in the Torah is there are cases where we accept one witness, but the idea that he can refute that witness, that's logical. Ela svarahi. Midei tahavi achis ach Sicha pasak shel chaylev pasak shel shuman. Because we're talking here, there's a piece of fat on the table. They look similar. Maybe it's chaylev, maybe it's shuman. Chaylev you're not allowed to eat. Shuman you are allowed to eat. V'yasa ad eid echad v'yamar bori li de shuman hi. and a guy comes along and said, I'm a butcher, I know the difference. That fat is shuman. Okay? So the meheman. In that case, we absolutely believe him because he has clarified the facts.
Expert testimony.
What?
Expert testimony.
Well, that's Eid Echad Neman B'Yisurin. It doesn't have to be expert testimony. Could be someone who says, I put it there and it's Shuman.
That's his business. He knows what he's doing.
No, but I added that. The Gemara doesn't say that. It could be anybody. If I have knowledge that it's Chaylev, I can say so. If I have knowledge it's Shuman, I can say so, even a hedyot. Okay? And in this case, even a woman. Okay? Midami. So is that case like our case about the Chayla, the witness and his protesting? Hasam lo istchazek isura. At the time that fat is sitting on the table, we don't know if it's heter or isur. And the witness comes along and he establishes the facts. Hacha, it's after the fact. Hacha, now we're talking about a woman who remarried. Hacha is chazek isura de eshes ish. How can you say the unknown piece of fat is an analogy to the woman's second marriage? With the unknown piece of fat, it's just fat sitting there. Maybe it's kosher, maybe it's chaylev. The witness clarifies what it is. But over here, where Mrs. Schwartz remarries, she has a chazaka of being Mrs. Schwartz. Does one witness take away the chazaka? It's not at all the same as a stam piece of fat and clarifying what it is. She's already, for sure, everybody knows she's a married woman and sleeping with another man is an avera. Okay? V'ein davar sheba erva pachos mishnayim. And we, halachically, should not, when it comes to erva, which is kares level, that's even worse than death, we should not allow remarrying without two witnesses. We're going really out on a limb by only allowing one witness. Ha domya ella lechaticha devadai chelev. So the only comparable case would be mamish, this is chelev, because the witness establishes it's chaylev. So if it's mamish chaylev, you can't eat it. So if she's mamish, a married woman, she should not be able to remarry. Okay? So if a witness comes along and we know this is chaylev, and he says, I think it's shuman, I know for sure it's shuman, Lo meheman, we wouldn't accept that. We wouldn't even accept 1,000 witnesses if we know the facts. Concept of witnesses is to establish the facts. But if the facts are already known, we don't believe a witness. If I testify the sky is green, we get 100 people that testify the sky is green. It doesn't change anything. The sky is still blue. Okay, so me dummy. So what would be a reasonable analogy? As we said, awesome. Afilu also bemeya lo mehemne. If there were 100 witnesses, we wouldn't believe them. The facts are still the facts. Hacha, but here with regard to the woman, kevan dechi asu be trei mehemne. If two witnesses did show up and say he died elsewhere, they would be believed to break her chazaka of being an Ashes Ish. She's now an almana. She can marry someone else. Chad nami hamene. So we can postulate that since you can break the chazaka with witnesses, And the Torah told us that there are cases where one witness is sufficient. We can believe the one witness that her husband is dead and she can remarry. So mide tahave a tevel hekdesh v'konomos. So our case winds up being similar to three other cases of tevel, cases of making an animal hekdesh, and cases of making an oath not to benefit from an animal. Hi, Tevel Hechidami. What's the case of Tevel? If the guy owns the Tevel, owns the grain, and he says, I took Truma and Meiser from it, it's not Tevel. Mishum de biyado lesakna, because he had the ability to act on that grain and turn it into regular grain from Tevel by doing what he had to do. Ella la'acher, but so we have to say that it's a case where Schwartz says, I know Abramowitz's grain is not Tevel.
And that's only if he's not an Amoritz, right? If he's not
Yeah, but we're talking, I mean, he testified in court and everything. Okay. No, even if he's an Amoritz. If an Amoritz says, I saw Schwartz take Truma and Meiser.
Says, I gave Tevel.
No, that's different. That's a special case. Okay, I didn't give. I gave Truma because they usually just give Truma. That's cheap. That they can get away with. All right, Ella. As we're talking about someone else, Mike Savar. So what's our thought process here? How with this analogy? Savar Toirem Mishalo Al Shel Chavero. If we hope that someone else can take Truma and Meiser from your Tevel without permission. You don't even need the owner's permission because you're benefiting him lo b'fanav. Mishum debiyado lesakno. So here, the witness could have done it since you could do it without the owner's permission. And if you hold fakir that Schwartz can't take Truma from Abramowitz's Tevel without permission, but Omer Anayadana Saken, and the guy says, I know that his Tevel was rectified. Who Gufa Minolan? How do we know that witness is believed? So now it's similar to our case. Hekdesh Nami, the case of Hekdesh is also a reasonable analogy. Kidushas Damim. If there are two kinds of Hekdesh, right? You can be Makdish, a Shepsel, and give it to the Bedekabayas. They can eat it for dinner, they could sell it, they could use them to buy oil, the money, or you could be Makdish it to be a Korban. So, Mishum, Kedushas Damim, if it's simply a case where you put the into Hekdesh on a monetary value, Mishum Debiyadul Pedusai, the guy could pay the value of the sheep and a couple extra bucks into Bedekabayas and redeem the sheep. It's no longer Kodesh. The Kedushas Haguf. If we're talking where the actual animal has the Kedusha, it's going to be a Korban. Day, if he owns it, Mishum de biyado it shule ole. He could go to a bezdin or to a chacham and say, I made a mistake. If I had known how much money it would cost to fly the sheep to Yerushalayim, I would never have done this and get off. The bezdin could take away could redeem it not redeem it, but could nullify his designation. So we have to be talking about a third party. V'omer Yadana Bey de it shil me mare ale. I know that Schwartz went to a bezdin and took off the kedusha on this animal. He goofam and alon. So how do we know that he is believed? Again, we now have one witness, Iser Ve'eter, so it's a good analogy. Kon mais nami, similar to declaring a cherem on the object. Ikasavar yesh meila become namais. Different opinions. One, that if you do eat something that you swore you would not eat, it becomes like meila. If it's a $10 piece of pie, you have to pay back $12.50. Okay. The kedushas damim nachasa lahu. So therefore, it's a monetary deal. Mishum debiyado lepeduso, and he has the right to redeem it. Ikasavar ein meila bekonomos. If you hold that the concept of using overpaying to get out of it does not work, okay. Isur ba'almahi. It's simply a straight case of Isur. I'm not allowed to eat it. And derachiv lahu akaspe. And that's just stam and Isur food stuff. Oh, D-Day, but if he owns the object and he says, I won't ever use that object, Mishum biyado le'ishuchle, he can go to a chacham and get out of it by saying, if I knew what the circumstances would be, I wouldn't have made the vow in the first place. Ella la'acher. It has to be a case where the witness is an outsider and he is testifying that I know the Amar, he says, Ana Yadana, I know for sure, the it shil mare ale, that the guy went and rectified his inadvertent or incorrect neder or shvua. So ha gufe minalan. So this case too, whether or not we accept the Eid Echad is analogous to whether or not we accept the Eid Echad with regard to the remarriage of the lady. Okay, so now in all of those cases, it's suffix, right? We haven't absolutely proven that Eid Echad is believed. We have a Torah concept that Eid Echad could be accepted. But in all these cases, we have some doubt in our minds. So Amar Reb Zera explains that when we read the Mishnah, we thought it was unfair to nail this lady who did what she did based on Besdin. Well, every one of us had in his mind, that's not fair if you didn't get up and leave now. It's that very fact, says Reb Zera, that allows Besdin to accept Eid Echad. Okay, in other words, the consequences are so severe that she won't give somebody $5,000 to testify her husband's dead. Or somebody feels I want to take Rahmanis on her. She's sitting there with no husband. What? And the guna, exactly. So that's what Reb Zera says. Mitoch choimer shehachmarta alecha b'sayfa. Because of the incredible level of severity with which we deal whatever, but you got that we're going to be so come down on her with such a heavy ton of bricks if it turns out that her husband isn't dead. That's what gives the Bezdin the clout hakalta aleha b'schila. That's what gives the Bezdin the right to be makil and take only one witness at the beginning, okay?
Yeah, but it's going to turn out that she's going to end up having mamzera.
Yeah, but that's so rare.
Why?
Because how often
Oh, you mean
is a
clear
witness
that-
going to say, I know absolutely certainly Abramowitz was dead and buried in Philadelphia. And then 10 years later, he shows up in Tel Aviv and says, I'm here. How often can that happen? So you have 10,000 agunas who are never going to be remarried. So Bezdin has made this kana to allow it, okay? But the Gemara asks your question right now. Lo yachmir velo lekil. So let's not get involved. Don't be makil with her now, and you won't have to be machmir on her later. So the Gemara says, Mishum iguna akil barabanan. In order to avoid the problem of a bunch of, don't forget, in those days, people would go on trips and never come home. They get on a boat, you have no idea if they're coming back. Today, and there was no email, you could, or no WhatsApp or whatever it's called. You couldn't get information. So women would be sitting home for perhaps a decade, not knowing what's happened to her husband.
I want to make another gezerah to allow, I know you can't, allow the husbands, beat them up, change.
Huh?
To give
That
him,
happened in
and
Russia,
they,
didn't it?
no, they find a
Russia,
guy who
yeah.
doesn't want to give the get.
But she's already remarried. His giving a get doesn't help. We have that gezerah. And we're going to use that. We're going to have that even here too. We do. What if they refuse to give it the get?
Yeah, you can't beat them up.
Yes, you can. You have to. That's the halacha. You have to.
You can't give a get by force.
All right.
You can't force it.
You're not hearing this from me. I am not saying this.
I know.
We
The guy went to
had
jail.
a case.
Rabbi went to jail.
We had a case in Oceanside, New York, where a 35-year-old man seduced a 16-year-old girl, and they made him. He married her, and he beat her up regularly. So we went to him and we said, we want you to give her a get. She went home. She moved home with her parents. He bashed down the door and dragged her out. We went to him. You got to give her a get. He said no. With the concurrence of Rabbi Belsky, we went to him with baseball bats and broke his leg. And he said, I'm not giving her the get. And we said, if you don't go to Bezdin tomorrow and give her the get, we will break both, we will shatter both kneecaps and both elbows. You will be an invalid for life.
Cops never came.
He never called the cops. He gave her a get.
Would have been in jail too.
But you do what's right. I was in jail a lot of times in the civil rights movement. You do what's right. You don't worry about going to jail. If you know you're right, you do what's right. That's what God wants from us. But that's a different subject. We're not talking about
We're
that
talking
here.
about two different sets of laws.
Right.
One law says to beat them up, and the other
Right.
law says you can't.
Okay, so I listen to a higher power. Okay, I Hebrew National. I listen to a higher power. Amar Rav. Now, Rav is going to qualify that all of these stringencies, and we're going to back off on all of these stringencies later on. Let's not be too worried. But lo shana ella shanisas b'ed echad. Rav says, and this is going to, now you have to keep an open mind as to exactly what Rav means. But Rav says as follows. She does not have to leave both husbands and get a get from both husbands unless the basis for her second marriage was Eid Echad. Avol nisus al pishnei edim lo teitze. But if she had two witnesses initially, she does not have to leave him. So obviously, the question is, which him? There's Harry and Yaakov standing there. I'm the first husband. I'm the second husband. Rav says she doesn't have to leave him. Who's him? Okay, so Machacho alei b'marava. When the rabbis in Israel heard about Rav saying she doesn't have to leave him in Bavel, they were rolling on the floor with laughter. Because the assumption is it means don't leave the second husband, right? Asa Gavra Vakoy, the husband is standing right here. Viat Armad Lo Teitse, and you say she can stick with the second one, she doesn't have to leave him? That's ridiculous. So now the Gemara says maybe it's not so ridiculous. Lo tzircha lo yodanan le. That rule, if you say it means don't leave the second husband, only applies if nobody recognizes the guy that showed up after a decade. The woman doesn't recognize her, the neighbors don't recognize him. He could be an imposter, okay? Because if we do not believe him, why would we make her leave him on the basis of only one witness? There too, she could say, I don't know who he is. So the Rav's case that we do not accept his claim to be a Brahmawit, right, is even is if there are two witnesses, okay? Anan Havanan Bahedya Michi Nafak Viad Hashta. We got on the boat with Abramowitz 10 years ago. We shared an apartment with him in Spain for the last 10 years. And we got on a boat with him coming back to 7 months ago. And we know for sure he is Abramowitz. And you, the wife, are the only one says, I don't recognize him because he changed his appearance. So now the Gemara wants to know, is that even possible? That someone could change so much that people who are intimately aware of him would not recognize him. We want to say that's true. Dixiv, v'yaka Yosef es achiv vehem lo hikiruhu. Yosef recognized his brothers when they came to Egypt to buy food, but they did not recognize him. And that's 22 years. Omer Rav Chisda explains, Melamed, this teaches us, Shiyatzo below Chesima Zaken, when he left, he was too young to grow up as a beard. And now when they appear before him, he's got a big, rich, full beard, and therefore his appearance has changed sufficiently that they can't recognize him. But soft trey ninahu. But the bottom line in our story, our two witnesses initially said he's dead. And now two witnesses come and say he's alive. So what, right? That's a big problem. And you turn the page. And if she remains with the second husband, he has to bring an asham toloi. That's a doubt, right? Two said yes, he's him. Two said no, originally he's dead. So now the second husband, is he or isn't he the first husband? So now if the second husband stays with the lady, that's where you'd bring an asham toloi. So Omer Rav Sheshes Kigon Shenisas La'achar Ma'ede. Since we have to be talking about a sort of a strange case. Two witnesses come from overseas. They say, I'm sorry, Mrs. Abramowitz, your husband died in Spain. And they try to comfort her. One thing leads to another, and she marries one of them.
One of the witnesses.
What? Yeah. So she marries one of them. So, Gufe be'asham, and therefore, he doesn't have to bring an asham. Because in his mind, he is absolutely certain that Abramowitz died. He went to Bezdin, he swore in court, I saw Abramowitz die. So 100 people saying that you were wrong, he's not going to change his mind. He is convinced in his own mind that he is right. And therefore, Asham Toloi does not apply. And Asham Toloi is only when you really have your own reasonable doubt in your own mind. This guy has a moral certainty that the other guy's dead. So he doesn't have to bring the Asham.
Once he brings the Asham, he could stay with her?
No. This is just if he acknowledges that I did something wrong, but I'm not sure, you bring an Asham Toloi.
But he has to leave her.
Of course he has to leave. Okay. Well, unless Rava meant that that the first guy gives a get and he can stay with her. That may be the case that Rav said. He does not have to leave. Didn't specify who. So who gufa ba'asham toloi kaima? But what about the lady? Maybe the man has a moral certainty that Abramowitz died. But if Abramowitz shows up with two witnesses, the woman has to have some glimmer of doubt. What did I do? So why does she? So let's shift the argument. Say she's the one that has to bring the Asham Taloi. So we're going to change. So now we're going to say, but Omeres Barili. She's going to say something like, look, I know for sure he's not my husband. My husband had a birthmark on his ankle and this guy doesn't. Or my husband, some characteristic that she is absolutely certain in her own mind that he's not the first husband. Now, even if factually he is, that she's certain in her own mind, she doesn't have to bring an Asham Taloi. So that's how we're resolving it. If that's the case, my lememra. So now where do we stand? We have two witnesses 10 years ago said he died, and we have two witnesses now say here he is. Okay? So why did Rav have to say anything at all? The woman is sure she's really married to man two. The man is sure he's really married to her. Everybody agrees we don't know who this guy is that showed up from Spain. So Takashi would stay with the second husband. The Bezdin would, it's almost like Motzei Menaraya, you know. If I say you owe me money, I can't take it unless I can prove it. So how can he get her back or ruin her second marriage? That it's left in dispute. So we stick with the chazaka of the second marriage. Vafila Rebbe Menachem beRebbe Yossi. Even the most chomer Rav Menachem, who says that if there's any doubt about the legitimacy of a marriage, they must separate. Even in this case, he would say, Lo ka'amar ella sheba'u edim. That's only when the second edim challenged the first edim, so you establish the doubt. V'achar kach nisas. In other words, two edim come from Spain and say Schwartz is dead, and the Bezdin gives him a death certificate. They declare him dead. 2 weeks later, two more edim came from Spain and say, guess what? He was in a coma, but he woke up. So now there's a legitimate doubt. Is he dead? Isn't he dead? Conflicting stories. If she now marries the other guy, in the face of that, her chazaka isn't broken that she's an Ashes Ish, and Reb Menachem would make them get a divorce. Okay? Aval nisas v'achar kach ba'edim. But if she married Beheter Gomer with two witnesses, not even based on the kula of one, and later on, 10 years later, she's got a husband, she's got a family, she's got an apartment in Boca, an apartment in Lawrence, and 4 kids in Colale, what? In Lakewood, and in Israel 2 and 2, right? And we're not going to, Lomar, even Reb Menachem wouldn't make them separate. Okay, Desanya, we have a brisa. Shnayim omrim mace. 2 people said that a guy died. Vishnayim omrim lo mace, and 2 others say he didn't die. Another possibility. Shnayim, a woman moves to Boca. She claims to be a widow, right? She starts flirting with you. I don't know. You're with Kranzler, who's a widower, right? Shnayim omrim nisgarshe. 2 witnesses claim she's a legitimate divorcee. Vishnayim omrim lo nisgarsha. 2 witnesses say she just moved out from her husband. He never gave her a get. Okay, harezu lo tenase. Those cases, the woman may not remarry because there's a legitimate doubt. The im nisas. But if she married before the second witnesses come and cast doubt on her status, lo teitze, she's not obligated to leave the second husband. Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi Omer, in those cases, he says, teitze, she does have to leave. Amar Rav Menachem Rabbi Yossi, he explains his position. Mas ani omer teitze. When do I say she has to leave the new husband? Bisman sheba'u edim v'achar kach nisas. Where the doubt was raised by Edim, and she said, I don't give a damn, I'm getting married anyway. Avo. Nisas v'achar kach bo'edim. But if she remarried Beheter Gomer, based on the witnesses that her husband was dead, and later they show up, harezu lo totze. That's the case where she doesn't have to leave husband too. And now we're going back to Rav. Ki ka'omer Rav nami. That's what Rav meant also. Bisman shabo edim v'achar kach nisas, in the case where she got married, witnesses came and raised the doubt, and later on she got married. And he is trying to challenge Reb Menachem Berebi Yossi. He's saying she doesn't have to leave even if the doubt was raised. The Ikeda Amri, others explained this whole thing a little bit more simply. Time Denisas v'achar kach bo edim. The reason Rav said she can stick with number 2 after witnesses come and challenge that the first husband really isn't dead is that the witnesses came after the marriage. But if the witnesses come first and she marries number 2 anyway, now she has to leave him. And so who is Rav paskening like? Rav is an Amira. He's paskening like a Tana. Come on, who? Reb Menachem Berebi Yossi. Okay, next. Maskif Rava. Rava challenges Rav. Remember, all these cases, Rav is saying stick with number 2. Rava challenges Rav. Menayim she'im lo rotza. Here is what if Cohen marries a Gerusha? He's not allowed to do that. He marries a Gerusha. The Rav comes to him and says, Mr. Cohen, I don't know who was your Masada Kedushin, but you can't do this. We have rules in our shul. You have to divorce her. And he says, I'm not divorcing her. Dafnu. The Bezdin appoints beater-uppers, and they beat him up to force him to give the get. Talmud Laimar, what is the basis that they can do this? Viki dashtoi. Kohanim have to maintain a certain level of sanctity. And that means Bal Korchoi, even if they have to force him to maintain his Kohanic sanctity and dump the divorcee. Okay? Hachidame. So how does this brisa fit with a woman that you're not allowed to be married to, right? If you say that it's a case where it was not one of the witnesses, right? We've had her earlier marrying one of the witnesses. Now she just marries this Cohen, right? She believes she's an almana, and she marries a Kohen. We are almanas allowed to marry a Kohen. And now the new witnesses come and say, you know what? She really wasn't an almana. She is a Zaina. She's now being with a man illegitimately. Veloka Amra Barili, she did not say, I know for sure my husband's dead. She didn't join the, okay. So Tzricha L'meimar did Dafno. So there, would the Torah have to say, beat up the Kohen to dump the woman? Elalav, what would be the case? Denisus le'echad ve'edeha. That she actually did marry one of the witnesses, so there's no doubt on his mind. The Ka'amra Borili, and she says, I know for sure that this guy is an imposter. So now there's no doubt in her mind. So now, but he's a Kohen, okay? The Katani Dafno. So that's the case where we would have to force him to divorce her because of her doubtful status.
Is that the law now?
What?
We force them. Now it's not the law, is it?
That's the halacha.
That is
I mean, as it's been pointed out, under modern American law, one might be hard pressed to actually act on that based on possible consequences. But the halacha is a Kohen who is illegitimately married has every single time he has intimacy with his wife is an Aveira. He must divorce her. Now, there have been in the modern America, since you raised this issue, in modern America, and even in modern Israel, they've come up with a loophole. Okay? So let's say Sidney Cohen becomes a Baal Tshuva, now he's Shlomo Cohen, right? But before he became from, he married a Giores or a divorcee. Nobody had a problem. A conservative rabbi did the marriage. Now they're from. So he can go to Bezdin and he can say, I want you to declare I'm not a Kohen so I can remain with my wife. You're looking funny. How do you know you're a Kohen? How do you know you're a Kohen? So explain to me how little Sidney knows he's a Kohen. His father tells him he's a Kohen, right? If his father isn't a shomer mitzvahs, he is pasol me'edus. So there is no chazaka that he's a Kohen. Now, out of respect for the father, we don't do that to every Kohen. Every Kohen who has somebody, a generation of non-religious people, we don't say you're no longer Kohanim. But in a case of pressing need, that can be the loophole to not destroy a marriage. That's halacha l'maisa. What I mean.
DNA.
What?
DNA.
Yeah, you could do, but then you got a bunch of Africans who are your
But
brothers.
I believe that
Okay.
there's a family in the shul that I used to daven in. The father is a Kohen who married a Gioris
Right?
before he was from.
Okay.
So he's considered a Kohen and his children are
Are
Halal.
halalim, correct.
But he's still considered a Kohen.
Because because that's questionable. There is a very strong body of halacha that he's still a Kohen, correct. Whether he should duchen or not is questionable. Whether he would be allowed to bring korban when the Beis Hamikdash rebuilt, those are issues that would have to be resolved. But he is still a Kohen. He is still a Kohen. But if he wanted to matir his marriage, apparently he doesn't care. He's willing to live with her, and the rabbi's not willing to beat him up. But if he wanted to matir his marriage, he could get a psak. He's not a Kohen. And interestingly, cases like that, kibbut aveim still applies. So such a person can't get Kohen Aliyah because he's not a Kohen, and he can't get Yisroel Aliyah because he's insulting his father. So I have seen a psak
Give him Agba.
that give him Hagba or give him Achron, but I saw actually a psak that till the father dies and for 10 years thereafter, the person can't take an Aliyah. All right, weiter. Okay, so now I don't even know where we are anymore. Alma makifin lemine. So obviously, in such a case, we would make the husband to divorce the woman, which is a contradiction to the way we have been understanding what Rav said. So one answer is Iser Kahuna Shiny. The level of the Kohen is a different deal. And if he's a Kohen, then we do not follow Rav, we make him divorce her. Or we could say, Ma Dafno, what does it mean we fight him? Dafno me'edim. We force him not to marry the woman by bringing in new Eidim. Okay? Next. We could switch the whole thing around. We could say what Rav is telling us is stick with husband one. Boys, aim. I'm sorry. We haven't gotten there yet. Boys, aima, if you prefer to say, Kishaboyu Eidim Biachar Kach Nisas. What we're talking about is where the doubt was raised by witnesses, and then she remarried. And our brisa that seems to challenge Rav is Rav Menachem Rabbi Yossi. Okay, now Rav Ashi says that our whole understanding that we're talking about sticking with husband two is incorrect. Rav Ashi Omer, Milo Teitze, the Omar Rav, what does it mean when Rav says she doesn't have to leave him? Lo Teitze, Mehete Rasarishon. She doesn't, literally, it means she doesn't leave the marriage, the first marriage, which was kosher. She sticks with number one. That's what he meant by don't leave her. But Rav Chada Zimna, but Rav said that earlier. Titanan, we had in our Mishnah, Nisas Shalob Rishus, if she marries without the special paperwork, meaning with two Eidim, Muteris L'Chazir Loi, she can go back to the first husband. Okay, the Omer Rav Huna Omer Rav Hachi Halacha Hilchasa, and Rav Huna said Rav told him that's the rule. So you see, we're backing off from those stringencies. Okay, so Chada Meklal de Chaverta Itmar. Rav wouldn't say the same thing twice. So the Gemara is telling us Rav said it explicitly once, and the other report doesn't say which one is based on inference. Okay. Now, what about the Mishnah saying leaving both husbands, the things that bothered us? Amar Shmuel, lo shana ela shelo machashtai. We do not paskin. She has to leave both husbands unless she did not argue with the new witness who says that he's not dead, or with the man who says, I am your husband, number one. Aval machashtai lai teitze. But if she challenges this fellow and say, you're not my husband, you don't have the birthmark on your ankle, she can stay with husband two. So you see, we're backing off of that heavy penalty. But my askinan, what kind of case are we talking about? Elema bevetre. If you say there were two witnesses who claim that this is your real husband, we were with him on the boat both ways and in the apartment in Spain. Ki machashta le mayhave. Who cares if she protests? We have two witnesses establishing the facts. Ella b'chad. So it either has to be the man alone or one witness saying, I know your husband's still alive. And time the machashtai, the reason she could stay with there is only one testimony that he's still alive is based on the protest. We had that with the Chalev, that if there's one says you ate it and one said I didn't, we don't accept the one. Okay? Ha shtika teitze. So the implication here is, unless she protests in the Beis Din, she would have to get divorced. But Omer Ula makes a general rule. And this is an interesting, and this is mamish, critical to our understanding of halacha. Omar Ula, echad, kol makom, shaha emna, taira ed echad. Whenever the Torah says this is a circumstance where you can believe one witness, hare ke'en shnayim, it is treated as if there were actually two witnesses. That's how powerful we accept the one witness in the cases where we accept one witness. Ve'en dvarav shel echad b'makom shnayim. So if there's one witness who says that he is not dead, and she says, I know in my heart he is dead, it's only one against two, effectively. So even if the woman, whether the woman disputes or not, we don't have to believe the second witnesses, because the Eid Echad who said he was dead was as if he was two witnesses. Okay, is that clear? Anybody got a problem with that? If the initial guy is accepted by Beis Din that Schwartz is dead, we give that the clout of two witnesses. So now any witnesses that come later, there's another general rule that it doesn't matter, because once it's done, once the first witnesses are accepted by the court, the second witnesses don't matter. That's also a concept. Okay, so Hachabamayaskinen, what are we talking about here? Bipsule Edus. So that's where it's a kosher, a 13 or above male of good character. He's accepted as if he's 2. But what about witnesses who, under other circumstances, would not be accepted at all? A gambler, a thief, a woman, a slave, right? And so that's what we're talking about, where the 2 witnesses are not kosher witnesses in other cases. The Rebbe Nehemiah. And we follow the rules of Rebbe Nehemiah, Desanya. He says in a brisa, Rebbe Nehemiah Omer, Kol makom she'amina Torah eid echad. Whenever we would accept one witness, we actually follow like the majority opinion. The asushtei nashim ish echad. So if there's one man who testifies one way, and then later there are 2 witnesses who testify the other way, Ukshnei anashim ish echad, or 2 men who testify against one way against a man who testified the other way. In those cases, we go with the 2, we don't go with the 1. The ibois ema kol heicha di asa ed echad kasher miikara. So if the first witness is a completely kosher witness, and he came first, this is what I said a moment ago, and where Bezdin closed the books, we accepted his testimony. Afilu meya nashim ke'ed echad damian. 100 women who then come and challenge him would not be acceptable. It's no different than just 1. And what are we talking about? Kevan da Asya Isha Mi'ikara. We have to be talking about where the first witness in other cases would not be acceptable, such as a woman. The Tirza the Rebbe Nehemiah Hachi, and this is how we explain Reb Nehemiah. What?
Excuse me. The Gemara says shtei noshim, which usually means 2 women.
Correct.
So with 2 women witnesses.
They're not witnesses.
No, now we're talking, that was before, where a man testifies in a case where women are acceptable and 2 women testify. We're going to see that it's considered 50-50. They cancel each other out.
And the women are believed.
Well, to the extent that they cancel the man. But the man is believed to the extent that he cancels the women. It gets tricky, but now let's talk about Kevan. Here's the case. Sha'asya Isha Mi'ikara. The first testimony that Schwartz is dead was by a woman, okay? And later on, 2 women come and say, we were nurses in the hospital, he ain't dead. So now it's invalid witnesses who are acceptable in this case versus 2 invalid witnesses who are acceptable in this case. Rabbi Nehemiah Omer, Kol makom she'amina Torah eid echad. Whenever the Torah allows us to accept a single witness, halaracha deos, we go with the majority. V'asu shnei nashim b'isha achas. And where the 2 women testify against the 1 woman, keshnei anashim keish echad, would be handled by the Bezdin exactly the same as if it were 2 men who testified one way and 1 man who testified the other way. And therefore we would believe the 2. Aval shtei nashim beish echad. Here's your case, Sev, where there are 2 women testifying one way and 1 man testifying the other way. Palga dami, it's 50-50. We don't accept anything. And she remains Erecheskes Ashes Ish. Okay? So Shricha, now the Mishnah went on. What? You had a question?
You have to stop here.
I mean, it's
Why? What time is it?
22.
Okay. All right. So we'll stop here. Now, I don't know what they're going to do tomorrow.
What you're gonna do tomorrow?
I have to come tomorrow? Nobody called me. Nobody told me that.
Oh, you have to come because you decided.
All right, what time is it tomorrow? What time is it tomorrow? What?
You got the sheet, you right off the
On the sheet, right?
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
What about 6?
Daf Yomi, it says 6:20.
Usually in the basement. Usually, I'm just telling you what.
All right.
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm
Yeah.
telling you what goes.
All right, if that's what it is, that's what it is. I'll go
If
to.
you show up, we'll have it. If you don't show up, we won't.
Okay, yeah, but okay.
Right?
All right. I mean, I'm being forced. I originally said I'm not doing it Shabbos and Shavuos, and they said fine. Now, then they called me up and said you got to do it Shavuos because what's his name won't do it.
Yeah, but
Now he got sick simply to spite me.
That's right. That's right.
But you had an opportunity to 5-6 to 1.
Yeah, but
But if you wanted to do it in your house.
Yes. I mean,
but
there was
Zev says no.
and what about the majority?
I tried to explain my rationale. Since it's scheduled in the shul, I felt we would have to have a consensus to move it. I understand that
You
disturbs.
have a consensus.
No.
Who are you going to want to ask? You want to make a call for the whole membership?
Mel, how long are you gonna argue? How long will you argue with you?
He's going to come to my house tomorrow morning and learn with me at
You have the same
10:30,
distance,
and he's going to have the same argument. He doesn't stop. Didn't he make you move? He doesn't stop.
Thank you very much.
Very well.
Oh, no.
So, it's interesting that nobody called me. When did Ches